Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40K, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Drukhari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craft Worlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40K stuff? My name is Ben Crane Barfer. I still haven't changed that, I think, for the last time, and I know pretty much fuck all about 40K. With me is my co-host, Christopher Crowlin Allen.
Morning. Hi.
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40K.
La la la.
And my dear brother Darren.
An unamused hello.
Who knows so much about 40K, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Morning, chaps.
All serious today, guys.
Yeah, all serious.
Yeah.
No jokes,
Yeah.
Ben. Too many jokes. We've had a comment, listeners, saying that we do too many jokes. And to those people, go fuck yourself.
Don't make me laugh.
Don't make me laugh.
I am no joke Ben today.
Yep.
Yep.
I must weep seriously over the lore of made-up toy soldiers.
Yeah. It's a very serious business. We must...
Yeah.
It's a very serious FTSE 100, 500 squillion business. Yep.
Yep.
I know things about finance. No.
It certainly sounds like it. Just shut up and take my money.
I should be an economist. Economist?
Anyway,
economist.
enough laughing.
A communist.
You're a communist. You should be a communist.
I'm an e-communist.
No, I'm too old to be a communist. I like stuff.
Big thanks to everyone that supports the show. You guys are great. If you would like to support us, there are a number of ways that you can do that. You can head over to Patreon and patronize us, or you can sign up for our Discord for just £3 per month. It's way too early and way too much coffee.
Too many jokes,
or you can pay. Or you can pay an extra. They don't even need to be jokes. That's the thing on this show. You can pay an extra
Thank Christ
a month and gain access to our bonus show, 40KO'd. We also have merchandise and links to all our affiliates. If you're into the hobby, you just hit the Quartermaster link in the description. Now, the easiest way that you can support us is by letting the ads that may or may not play in this episode play fully. And you can also come and drop us a message on the comment section on whichever platform you are on. That bit always makes us feel dirty, so let's move on swiftly.
Feed the algorithm. Like, follow, subscribe. Like, follow, subscribe. Everybody, like, follow, subscribe.
I feel like that rolls off the tongue for Kral so well. I feel like he's been practicing it like pre-recording. He said
Like,
it in the
follow,
previous
subscribe.
episode, and I was
You're
like,
getting a preview into our Minor Namies bedroom life.
Yeah, I was about to say that's what you shout at climax.
Like, follow, subscribe.
Smash that like button!
I don't even want to see the comment section in that in that content.
Too many jokes.
Too many jokes.
The
whole thing's a joke.
The whole thing, yeah. While I enjoy your sexual antics, I'm against slapstick of any nature.
Yeah, I feel the information to joke ratio is wildly out of whack. All right. Anyway, Kral, you know what time is.
Citizen of the Imperium, it's time for frontal, lobotomy, or bottle in front of me.
Oh, God. I have no recollection. Come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
Last episode 35, Badab War, Part 3. Question 1. What was the name of the location of the ceasefire meeting? Do you remember? It had a ridiculous name.
Grief.
Oh, Kral. Just smashing it out of the park. I am surprised and aroused in equal measure.
You're surroused?
I'm surprised. Enough of the laughing. It's not funny. What was found by the Inquisition in the thumb joint? Remember the thumb joint?
Thumb joint.
So the Inquisition came to town.
A knuckle?
And they had a look around, and they found that the Astral Claws, along with their Are they a successor chapter of the Astral Claws, the Tiger
It's believed
Claws?
that they were, yeah.
Yeah, so they were doing some funky stuff with them. Do you remember what the funky stuff was?
Was it some crazy like genetic enhancement stuff? Like we're going to give this guy an extra inch on his thumb.
The index finger and middle finger swapped for the first time.
We've kind of swapped your heart for a baked potato. Yeah, no idea.
No, that was it, Kral. You got the answer right. They were doing gene seed experiments.
Space
thumbs.
Oh, right. Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, cool.
It was just knuckles all the way down.
And we're back to his lovemaking. Sorry, carry on.
Final question. What real-world historical military force were the Minotaurs styled on? Easy one, this.
Well, Spartans, wasn't it?
Spot on, Kral. It's 100%.
Yeah, you cannot.
100% in this one.
They were probably... No, they were the most striking, coolest looking... Well, the artwork anyway that I saw. They just looked fucking dope. Really cool.
I think we've had a few comments.
Best looking Marines, definitely.
We had a few comments on, I think, the first Badab War episode of people saying, "I can't wait for you to get to the Minotaur." I'm like, already there, bro. I feel it, man.
Already there. I'm looking for a labyrinth. What?
Yeah, I've got the poster. Crowd, 100%, mate. I'm impressed.
What am I on now? What's my net score?
62.5%.
Yeah. I'm at the unknown threshold or not. I don't know. We don't know what the threshold is. It changes.
No, you're pretty far below it. But I love that you think that. You just keep on trucking.
All right. But it's not 61%, so fuck you, Ben.
Exactly. Which is basically 100%, right? It's basically 100%. Yeah. Right. Okay, well, that's that.
That's that. Right. I'm launching into it. Shut up, both of you.
No more jokes.
So we're going to start the episode with an audio-only episode with a map, which we'll put in the show notes. But that will give you an idea of the disposition of the Badab the Maelstrom Zone, in terms of red for Loyal Imperium, blue for the secessionists, and purple for the kind of most contested areas that are still going on. So we ended last episode with the effective collapse of the Lamenters, who were then imprisoned.
Nice.
And so the pale stars...
Did you make this map?
I did, yeah. The pale star. Well, I did. I used my considerable Photoshop skills to add coloured boxes. So the pale stars in the bottom are now...
Is this your work? Is this your work, Darren?
This is his work, Kral. He's honestly smashing it. He's basically a graphic designer.
Yeah, shut up for a second, Darren. Let's just admire your handiwork.
Admire my boxes.
I should also say that I know that that's not his best work. I've seen the other work that he does with mods and stuff, and it's fucking like next level stuff. So, yeah, this is...
Mate, you had me at geometric colors, buddy.
It's very abstract, isn't it? It's like if Picasso were to do a military map.
Yes. There's not... Yes. Well, anyway, thank you very much for your kind mockery. So, as I say, the south and west of the Maelstrom Zone is now largely secure by the Imperium, which also means that almost all of the stable warp routes into the Maelstrom Zone are under Imperium control. And so we're going to take a look this episode at some of the events in the Purple Zone, which is around Galen, Angstrom, and then the Magog cluster, around those kinds of areas in the center of the map. As at this stage, the secessionists are quite well hemmed in. But the secessionist forces and the Loyalist kind of Imperium forces under the command of the High Lords of Terror are not the only human, in quotes, presence within the Maelstrom Zone. We also have a Forge World, an independent Adeptus Mechanicus domain known as Angstrom, which is slap dab in the middle of the what I like to call purple zone.
That's not what I call the purple zone.
I don't want to know what you call them.
Yeah, you don't want to see what's in the middle of that motherfucker.
Aubergines.
Eggplant, if you like.
Oh, listeners, I don't know why I bother. So, one of the key aspects of the Mechanicus domain that is the Angstrom system is that they have complete autonomy and independence from the wider Imperium, as do most Forge worlds, but they do contribute into the economy of the Imperium. And in this specific instance, it is every 3 years they pay a bounty of advanced weaponry and refined ores and materials to the Imperium. They don't care which representative of the Imperium turns up to collect the bounty, only that it is collected on time. And so for hundreds of years, the Maelstrom Warders have been collecting this materiel from the Mechanicus, and the Mechanicus have just been going on with their day-to-day existence. Mr. Ben.
Can you define advanced weaponry as it stands in the Imperium?
Voice-activated guns. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah. It's like plasma weaponry, melta weaponry, advanced kind of heavy laser weapons, that kind of idea. So it's the more complicated end of small arms in terms of pistols and guns, not actual arms, Chris. Well done.
Okay, fine.
But then into like vehicles as well.
Right.
Vehicles.
Okay.
So
sweet.
The Red Scorpions and the Salamanders chapter, under the command or under the guidance of Karab Khan, who is the overall strategic military leader of the Imperial forces, he of Red Scorpions fame, launch a sabotage mission to prevent the secessionists from from getting the bounty. I don't know how you managed to. No, I was going to make a chocolate joke. Let's move on.
Ew, desiccated coconut.
The resulting chaos and destruction from this sabotage attack provoked the Angstrom Mechanicus, who immediately attacked both sides and expelled them from the system, and then went on further to attack the systems of Galen, again in the center of the map there, just underneath Grief, and then Iblis in the Endymion cluster, which is the Mantis Warriors' home kind of systems where they are based largely within this campaign. The Angstrom incident, as it's referred to, did succeed in kind of the shutting of the doors for this additional material, as the Mechanicus basically said, fuck y'all, I don't want anything to do with anyone until this is resolved. It was eventually resolved when the inquisitorial representation was made to the Mechanicus of Angstrom, and tempers were cooled and things were explained, and ultimately the Karab Khan, the Red Scorpions kind of commander, ordered that the Firehawks chapter, do you remember the Firehawks, the really well balanced and not at all lunatic?
Oh yeah.
Space Marines.
Yeah. Never lost it.
Non-genocide guys.
That's right, yeah. And some other elements from other chapters to blockade Angstrom's outer systems or outer planets, so for the rest of the war, so that there would be no advantage really to any side based off of the equipment supplied by the Mechanicus. This was a huge victory for the Loyalist forces because it largely cut warp routes of the secessionists, of the kind of the blue areas on the map. So it severed the regular safe travel routes between the Endymion cluster and the Badab sector itself. And so that meant that it was a divide and conquer, really, and it had split the Tyrant of Badab's forces. Now, saying that, the executioners still were out there, probably executing, and
as was their wont.
Yes.
As was the style of the term.
And so they remained really the only external threat insofar as outside of those two sectors, regularly attacking Imperial shipping and the Loyalist forces. This is where we really start to see a shift for the secessionists from proactive raids into defensive actions and sieges.
They're on the back foot now.
Exactly right. The Mantis Warrior continued to engage in their guerrilla warfare against the Loyalist forces, and indeed there was a renewed kind of suppression campaign against the Mantis Warriors, spearheaded by the Fire Angels and the Sons of Medusa. Now, the Fire Angels, they're the kind of silver-armored guys with red crosses as their chapter badge, and they're the kind of sword masters. They're the kind of Knights Templar, equivalent within the Badab War. And the Sons of Medusa are the kind of slightly cyborgy successor chapter to the Iron Hands. So lots of robotniks. Mr. Ben.
How effective is a group of sword masters going up against another chapter that have guns?
No, they have guns, but they are supreme kind of melee fighters. So it's they still have like bolt guns and pistols and missile launchers.
Okay. So, it's not like, charge! Oh, we're dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is their aim to get in as quickly as possible then? Like to get into close combat as quickly as possible? Is that their...
They value single combat as kind of duels and kind of blade work. So a lot of stuff is done through champions and that kind
gauntlets.
Of... that kind of idea. Yeah.
Take their space gauntlet off, slap you around the head.
Yeah, exactly. And then they realize they're in space and they've just decompressed their suit. And like,
But it's okay. They have an extra inch on their thumb, so it's cool.
No, these are the good guys. They don't have extra.
Oh, they got regular thumbs. Show us your thumbs.
They don't have extra thumb length.
Thumbs out, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Sun's out, thumbs out. Sorry, and so on.
While the Fire Angels are engaged with the Mantis Warriors in combat, they also have to, I was going to say beat off an orc attack, but they had to fight off orcs. But immediately following the kind of successful repulsion of the orc attack, suddenly Mantis Warriors began ambushing not only the Fire Angels, but also the remaining Greenskins, clearing out the kind of Xenos threat. Because even though they're on the secessionist side, they're still, humanocentric space marines. Ultimately, the Fire Angels took an absolute beating, and only 37 Fire Angels survived that suppression campaign, stranded as they were on the planet of Sigard 6. While that's happening, the Executioners chapter continues to wreak havoc on the Loyalist supply convoys and, the supply convoys, seizing and destroying it's 43 kind of merchant traders and 11 warships, while their base is largely still hidden within the Maelstrom Zone. Heavy raids were conducted by the Executioners, including extremely bloody clashes amongst the Uzael system against the Minotaurs chapter. And so you can imagine the Spartans heading into battle against the Executioners, who are an Imperial Fist successor chapter, obsessed with taking the heads of their enemies. So there was lots of power spear poking and power axe chopping.
Nice.
Sorry, was that the Minotaurs versus Executioners?
Yeah, Minotaurs versus the Executioners, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
A lot of slashing and jabbing, Chris. You're a big fan of slashing and jabbing.
Yeah, totally. Kebabbing. jabbing, stabbing,
Grabbing,
bopping,
poking.
twisting, booping.
While all this is happening and the Loyalists now are beginning to firmly wear down the secessionist forces, Lord Kuln really began to feel that the remainder of the campaign was going to involve, scorched earth campaigns and kind of apocalyptic purges of entire systems, if not just main planets within those systems. And he realized he needed to strike very quickly before Huron could rebuild and fortify not only his systems, but try and reconnect then the Endymion cluster and the Badab sector, and so that they weren't, the forces weren't divided.
I mean, they're many, many light years apart. How are you going to... I'm loving the visual aids, by the way. It really helps.
Yeah.
But you've got like various nebula between there and there. It's like...
Yeah,
a little bit of a bridge.
It's the stable warp routes. It's the warp corridors that they're trying to retake to be able to move troops en masse between the two disparate sectors. Underneath Grief there, in the center of the map, you've got Galen, and then underneath that you've got Sterngrad. Galen really is one of the key systems within the Maelstrom Zone, as it is in the heart, literally in the heart of that area of space, and so it's quite crucial in terms of policing the surrounding warp routes. Mr. Chris?
On your fantastic visual aid here on the map, some of the key areas, so like Grief, Galen, looks like they've got arrows pointing in various directions. Is that significant? So Grief is kind of pointing north-northeast, Galen to the east, and Sterngrad to the east as well, or is that just arbitrary?
They're depicting which way the main warp route goes.
Oh, nice. Right, okay. Over there.
So
that's cool.
The Galen system had stood contested for 6 years and had changed hands multiple times during the kind of opening salvos, or the first 2/3 of the Badab War. The planet of Galen 2 had been rendered largely uninhabitable because all of its kind of geodesic domes had been destroyed and the toxic atmosphere had gotten in to the population centers, meaning that literal millions of people had been forced to migrate then to another planet within the system of Galen 6. Under the command of the Red Scorpions and with an Inquisitor Crowner. Yeah, Crowner, nailed it. They plan to pacify Galen 6 while preserving enough of the population and the infrastructure to serve as, basically serve the Imperium's war effort. And as you'll see, it's quite a centralized system, meaning that if they could lock that down, together with the kind of the severing of the Angstrom system from the Maelstrom Zone as a whole, it meant that purple zone, the central kind of corridor within the Maelstrom Zone, would now be firmly under Imperium control. So a campaign was launched. The Sons of Medusa, the green-clad successors to the Iron Hands, began with precision orbital bombardment, claiming landing zones around the central kind of large old city, and then spent the next 3 days fortifying those cleared out areas. On the fourth day, the Sons of Medusa launched an armored assault. So, lots of Predators, Whirlwinds, Vindicators, those kinds of tanks, none of which we've really covered in any detail, most of which we'll cover when we cover Space Marines in a few episodes' time. But they were supported in that. The tank attack was supported by land speeders, which are the kind of armored hover cars of the Space Marines, and the dreadnoughts, the great big walking war engines. The Inquisition demanded the mass surrender on repeat through the loudhailer systems on the vehicles, and those who either resisted or began fleeing were cut down straight away without any quarter being offered, while anyone who surrendered unconditionally with no resistance was spared. So within
What would have
56
happened
hours
to
of...
them?
What do you mean?
When they were spared, would they have just been assimilated into the loyalist forces?
So you have a habit of just asking questions that I'm just about to answer.
Sorry,
Outrageous.
ignore that. Yeah.
Within 56 hours, the old city was fully under Imperial control, which sent shockwaves around the rest of Galen 6, prompting further mass surrenders amongst all of the kind of outlying cities on the planet. The old city was converted into effectively a prison city and was then used to process the entire population.
Wow.
And once again, an entire planet was turned over to penal servitude. So they were prisoners now. They were working prisoners, either hard labor in factories or serving in penal legions. So entire regiments of Imperial prisoners given guns and explosive collars and sent off to fight in the name of the Emperor.
Wowzer.
It was considered a fairly significant victory for the Loyalists because there were relatively low casualties amongst the Imperial forces that came in. And ultimately, the planet was left to the Inquisition, the Inquisitor Cranmer from the Order Hereticus, who deal with heresy within the Imperium, and it eventually transformed fully into a prison world. And perhaps still to this day, well, not this day, but this day, but 38,000 years in the future, it's still atoning. While this was happening, while the Galen campaign was occurring, which now locked down largely all of the trade routes within the Maelstrom Zone and kind of firmly cemented the severance between the two kind of secessionist space areas, Sparias, I'll call them.
Nice.
While that was happening, a dark shadow emerges from the warp. A single Space Marine strike cruiser called the Levitus Vex emerges much like a shark out of the warp and into the Maelstrom Zone. It broadcasts identifiers which are ancient but still valid, marking it as a loyal and old chapter which had been absent from Imperial affairs for millennia. And these were the Carcharodons Astra, ultimately known either as the Carcharodons or as the Space Sharks, which is how they were originally named in way back in the first article of the Badab War. These were a grey-clad chapter of Space Marines, and I'm going to throw up a picture for the lads, and we'll include it in the show notes as well, of course. These are an incredibly savage. They make the Minotaurs look kind of well-balanced. They are a truly ancient chapter of Space Marines whose kind of the cultural affectation, you know how the Ultramarines are like Greco-Roman or classical. The Carcharodons are Polynesian and kind of Maori inspired. So they operate as human sharks. That's how they envisage themselves. They have two kind of great defining characteristics. One is the grey tithe, which is they go in and they extract from whatever system or force they're facing, be it friend or foe, and extract as much equipment and weaponry as possible to rearm themselves. And they also have a red tithe, which is where they'll go in and take, a large number of potential recruits and draw them into the chapter. Most end up as kind of servitors, but those who are, those who follow the kind of normal pattern for Space Marine neophytes who are either the ideal age is about 12, and they're quite aggressive young boys, men, and they'll be forced to fight to the death until there's only a handful left who are judged as being worthy to join the chapter as a whole.
Sorry, these guys are the who? Sorry,
the Carcharodons.
They look kind of pesky. They've got this kind of like hee look about them.
Yeah, bitchin' suspenders as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's because they're wearing older patterns of armor because they're the various different aspects of their lore point to them being a successor chapter of the Raven Guard, but were a chapter who possibly existed during the Horus Heresy.
Shit the bed. They just got lost in the warp or something.
No, the Raven Guard had a lot of chapters that were sent out to manage the kind of edge of the Imperium. And along with, the same is true for a lot of White Scar chapters. Chapter being an organization within the Space Marine Legion during the time of the Horus Heresy. We'll talk about them at greater length in the future, but these guys are the real deal when it comes to the angry supporters of the Emperor, who they view as the kind of void father of their culture, of their chapter culture. Anyway, so they claim to have come in response to a summons from Terra. Their commander, Force Commander Tyberos, presents his details to the inquisitorial representatives among the Loyalist forces, and after a thorough psychic probing and genetic sampling, the Inquisition verifies who they are and their kind of their noble purpose within the Maelstrom Zone. They immediately set to work and go through what's called the Tranquility Campaign, where they steamroller through the Endymion cluster, planning to destroy the Mantis Warriors rather than just kind of hem them in within the Endymion cluster, so that they can focus purely then on the Badab sector. The Carcharodons are utterly brutal in combat, and while the fleet emerges near the Sigurd system within that area of space, they take no prisoners whatsoever and devastate the various void colonies and the what's referred to as asteroid citadels, the kind of outposts amongst there, the either civilian or military, and they strip out all the resources they can, and anyone who they judge as being a good fighter, they draw into their own forces, they draw into their kind of the red tithe to be able to replenish their own forces, either as chapter serfs or as potential neophytes. They go from planet to planet, and I think I have I'll drop a little image in here of the campaign, and you can see represented in the kind of bottom right the red shark of their logo. As
just floating in space,
and that's the path they take through the Endymion cluster, devastating planet after planet. Just a bit of a stroll.
Yeah.
As they continue to ravage the worlds within that area, it utterly breaks the Mantis Warriors as a cohesive fighting force. And on Endymion Prime, the chief librarian of the Mantis Warriors, Azara Redth, and his forces fight to the death, just as the kind of Carcharodons believed that they would. The Fire Angels, if you recall, these are the Knights Templar Swordmasters with the thumb guns. I can't remember. Were utterly disgusted by the dishonorable methods and withdrew from the war as a whole after suffering huge casualties during the Tranquility Campaign. Thus, we see that the Endymion cluster now has been firmly neutralized by the brutality of the Carcharodons, mirroring the brutality needed to conquer the Pale Stars, by the Minotaurs in the kind of south of the Maelstrom Zone. And it also foreshadowed a more brutal event in the Endymion cluster that would happen towards the end of the Badab War as a whole. So the savageness and bloodthirstiness of the space sharks, because I'm tired of saying Carcharodons, was evidenced in the Corsan massacre. So an Imperial Navy patrol encountered a wrecked smuggler's base in a kind of desolate world where all evidence pointed to a staggering combat between the executioners and the Carcharodons, with almost two whole companies, a company on either side, had fought to mutual annihilation, where many of the Astartes were kind of locked within their power armor in kind of combat with an opponent, just kind of dead in space or on the surface of this arid planet. Many of the warriors or many of the space marines found were also just had unbelievably savage wounds and injuries as a kind of testament to axe-wielding chapters. So the executioners wield power axes designed to pierce through armor, and the space sharks used chain axes, which are the axe versions of chain swords. Both chapters kind of later refused to acknowledge that this incident even occurred, and it's not known which chapter claimed victory within that specific combat. But I mean, that must have been a weird thing to kind of walk through. It just these towering transhuman super warriors just dead, locked eternally in combat with each other. Just, yeah.
Wow. I love the idea of like mutual annihilation. It's like they had a conversation before. It's like, should we annihilate each other? He's like,
On three?
Yeah, I'm keen.
On three.
Yeah, okay.
Wow, you son of a bitch.
Whoa, you said 3. Oh, you meant on
1.
4. Right, okay. Yeah. Are you fighting a hopeless war against a galaxy-spanning empire? Did you pick a fight with the biggest kid at school and now are deeply regretting your life choices? If only there was some way of evening the playing field. Well, I'm here to tell you there is. At DB Cartography, we specialize in expertly coloring in other people's maps to help you turn the tide in your pointless conflict. Whether it's sticking it to the god in the golden throne, or jumping Big Jimmy Turner in the park after school and giving him a solid thrashing, our tactical maps will allow you and your team to picture the exact nature of your enemy's downfall. Our process is quite simple. We take other people's highly detailed maps on which they have spent huge quantities of time making, place some vibrantly colored geometric shapes over them, and then claim they're ours. A tried and tested technique dating back generations. DB Cartography. Plagiarize, strategize, stabilize, and then visualize their demise.
In terms of the ongoing campaign, there was now a drive to shore up the eastern side of the war of the Maelstrom Zone. So the Loyalists now own all of the entryways from the west and from the south, and now effectively control the north because the Endymion cluster is now firmly under Loyalist control. They now needed to shore up the eastern side of the Maelstrom Zone so that the Badab sector itself was completely cut off from any sense of reinforcement from any kind of allies that they may have. This became known as the kind of Clash of Iron and Fire. So it was the Gift of Fire strike force under the command of Pellas Mirsan, who was a kind of famous leader within the Salamanders chapter, and if you recall, the laconic chaplain Encome of the Minotaurs. If you recall, he's the one that goes to the meetings and just doesn't speak, just nods when he needs to nod. Yeah.
Signs.
He minds. Well, you've got power armor on. He's more used to interpretive dance.
Yeah. Is he convulsing? I think he's convulsing. Do you need help, sir?
The hammer of this campaign really falls at the Lambton system, which is on the far east of the Maelstrom war zone within that purple sector. That central band. They were concerned, obviously, about it being a training ground and recruitment ground for the secessionist forces, and they were proved right when they discovered this kind of ragged armada of scavenged ships, freighters, and indeed just kind of wrecked ships assembled by the Astral Claws within the system, and then discovering on the planet of Shapiras a enormous set of training camps established to be able to forge armies from conscripts from the various sort of mutated barbaric tribes that were quite near the warp zone that is the Maelstrom itself. So you've got the kind of mutating power of chaos affecting the planets and systems nearby it. Mr. Ben?
I noticed just below the Endymion cluster there's a little sign, and I think it's pointing to that band around the that central clusterfuck, and it just says high-risk warp anomalies.
Yes.
I think we may have touched on that before, but I can't quite remember what it is. Is that related to this?
That's where the warp zone and real space mix. So you get demon worlds and hell planets and other things that are bad, like, entire systems that are just Milton Keynes. So, dull. A immediate decision to attack is made by Mirsan of the Salamanders, driven mostly by the realization that most of the enemy warships were in fact away because it was such a kind of raggedy armada that was left within the system. The Salamanders and the Minotaurs immediately made planetfall almost within the heart of the secessionist kind of bastions and training camps, while their ships and the naval escorts attacked what would be charitably called the enemy fleet, with a goal of eliminating whatever armada was there. You've got to picture that the secessionist fleets in orbit around the planets were kind of mass troop carriers, because they were going to take hundreds of thousands of these brutal tribespeople and mutants into combat and put them into service in the name of Huron, of the Tyrant of Badab. The Minotaurs opened up their assault on the various camps by using Thunderhawk gunships to kind of blow through the defensive walls, the curtain walls as they would be known, and then drop in Vanguard veterans, which are the kind of veteran Space Marine assault troops. So it gets very up close and bloody very quickly. And despite taking heavy casualties from the newly discovered, but the retaliators are the Astral Claws retaliator squads. These were the enforcers of the Astral Claws. They dealt purely in carrying out the will of the Tyrant of Badab for special missions and population suppression, that kind of idea. Land Raiders and Siege Dreadnoughts were also deployed by the Minotaurs, enabling them to pin down the larger pockets of enemy forces and enemy resistance, and thus they were able to, much like they did on the larger scale with the Endymion cluster and the Badab sector, they were able to divide and conquer and ground down the larger pockets of resistance. The Salamanders themselves attacked directly into the heart of the training camps. And so found themselves surrounded by tens, if not hundreds of thousands of kind of heretic tribespeople or heretic warriors, effectively. Their forces really split between two kind of destructive fists. One was the Caestus or Caestus assault rams, which are the preferred boarding troop carrier of the Space Marine chapters. These are effectively flying tanks with huge melter guns on the front that allow them to dissolve through the hulls of ships and get through the walls of any defensive system as well. The Fire Drakes, which are the first company of the Salamanders, their Terminators either landed through with the boarding craft or teleported directly into the heart of the kind of training camps, destroyed everything they could with their storm bolters and missile launchers, the Cyclone missile launchers for the Terminator armor suits, and assault cannons and heavy flamers. So it was total war within the summer training camps of the secessionist forces.
Wait, sorry, whereabouts in the sector is this at the moment?
It's in the purple section in the central belt. It's on the far right at the top. There's a small system called Lambton.
Oh yes,
Lambton.
Yeah.
Lambton in Northumberland.
Yeah, Lambton on Thames. Yeah. Lambton on Maelstrom.
Lambton on Maelstrom. The overwhelming attack by the Minotaurs and the Salamanders was not. It was not an easy thing to keep going. The retaliator squads of the Astral Claws kept attempting to rally the mutants and savages, but the Salamanders held strong against the enemy infantry, using their kind of powerful weaponry and willpower to beat back such counterattacks. There was a significant presence of dreadnoughts within the Salamanders' force, led by a dreadnought known as Brearth Ashmantle. Great World of Warcraft name.
Nice.
That's right up there. In the climax of the battle, Ashmantle tore the commanding Astral Claws Centurion in two in front of the forces. And this Centurion had been the...
Yeah, like a Christmas cracker.
Yeah.
Like an 80s bodybuilder tearing up a phone book.
And then he put the hat on and off he went.
Yeah. And then he stamped on the remains and then set them on fire and then came back and stamped on them again, and just to prove his point.
Overkill.
But with the death of their kind of brutal leader, the secessionist forces just completely routed, and the Loyalists were able to kind of fortify their beachhead within the system. Mr. Ben,
you mentioned a siege dreadnought earlier. How does that differ from a normal dreadnought?
Siege dreadnoughts tend to be a couple of meters taller and wider.
Right.
It's literally an ordinary dreadnought, but that's received significant armored upgrades on its torso and sarcophagus, which hold the remains of the Space Marine that is piloting this thing. They come equipped with very specialized weaponry, including bolter gun arrays, melter gun arrays. They have this kind of an autocannon, so a really huge, heavy. It's 4 tank cannons on an arm, just constantly shooting,
Wow.
and they have various different types of manipulator, like power claws or what have you, to kind of dig through bunkers and strong points.
Yikes!
They are kind of relics. So it's very rare for a chapter to have some, but of course the Minotaurs, being who they are and who their patrons are, the High Lords Terra, they always get the equipment they need, and it is geared towards suppression of Space Marines for the Minotaurs. Beneath the main kind of fortress that the Minotaurs had taken, they discovered Heretek laboratories. So the Mechanicum of old, who fell to chaos had a presence within the training camps, where a significant, it was more kind of specialists in biology and biological weapons. There were rooms just stacked full of combat drugs, and genetic engineering experiments were being conducted on many of the enslaved Imperial Loyalists who had been captured throughout the Maelstrom Zone by the various secessionist forces. As they went through the kind of secret and hidden laboratories, at the lowest level, they discover a vault that was defended by what's referred to as the corpse takers. These were the bad apothecaries of the Astral Claws, who would rip the genetic or the gene-coded progenoid glands from Loyalist space marines. And so they found huge vaults containing the stolen genetic seed from both Loyalist and secessionist troops, which had been used to bulk up their forces, but it was also being used to see if they could improve, in quotes, upon the perfection that the Emperor had managed to achieve.
Improve
with
on perfection.
The creation of the Space Marines, yeah.
Sounds like heresy to me.
Yeah. With the end of the Gift of Fire, they decided to head back. It was a significant victory for the Loyalists, and they wanted to rejoin the force. As they headed out back into Imperial controlled space, the task force, this is the Salamanders effectively at this stage, was struck by a powerful kind of warp squall, a warp storm. And though the navigators managed to avert any kind of sense of disaster from this impact, in fact, only a single escort frigate was lost within the warp. The Pyre of Glory, which was the flagship of the Salamanders, and another Imperial Navy vessel called the Admiral Gregorius, was forced back into the Maelstrom. So they were pushed back, they were shoved out of the warp and back into the Maelstrom zone, that area to the kind of galactic east of the map. The Astral Claws immediately counterattacked their strike cruiser Hyrcania under the command of a real piece of work called Commodus, Kamak Commodus, or as I call them, Karamak Commodus, because I am dyslexic.
Nice.
Delicious.
They sought vengeance because of the destruction not only of the bases, the training camps, but also the removal of the prisoners and the gene seed. They wanted all that back, and they wanted to destroy the salamanders who had taken it. They were not only there by themselves, they had joined forces with the executioners who were stationed on the ocean world of Deluge. Great name for an ocean world.
Absolutely.
The Rontiel. We're from the ocean world of Rontiel. The executioners...
Sounds arid.
Yeah. Battle group Moist, led by a ship known as the Phaeton's Wrath, attacked the Loyalist vessels, and Admiral Gregorius, or the Admiral Gregorius, was destroyed in the opening salvo, leaving the Pyre of Glory, the Salamander's ship, well, effectively by itself. The Salamanders are doughty warriors, either in land or in the void, and withstood the initial attacks and repelled the boarding assaults offered by both the executioners and the Astral Claws, destroying two of the attacking frigates from the kind of combined secessionist fleet. After about 3 hours, the Phaeton's Wrath, the flagship of the executioners' fleet, disabled the engines of the Pyre of Glory, leaving it dead in space. And Thulsa Kane, the High Chaplain of the Executioners, a real kind of honourable warrior within a chapter of honourable warriors. If you recall, they were only fighting with the secessionist cause because they had debts of honor and ties of honor with the Astral Claws in their kind of shared past over millennia. Thalsacane offered an honourable surrender to the Salamanders, vowing if they disarmed immediately, they would all be given safe passage to Loyalist space, but, their ship would still be theirs. Their ship would be taken. Mirsan, who had the commander of the Salamander force, who had while he was a neophyte, while he was a scout, had fought with the executioners and knew them to be space marines of their word and upstanding, honourable warriors within the Imperium, ultimately accepted the terms of surrender and handed his sword over to Thalsacane himself on the bridge of the Pyre of Glory. And so, accepting an honourable surrender or offering honourable surrender, it being accepted, and now they were waiting to be, sent off on their merry way. Despite all this happening and this kind of meeting of honour between the various chapters, old Karamak Commodus and his forces boarded the Pyre of Glory and fought their way to where the gene seed was held that had been captured, and massacred all the members of the Salamanders who were defending where this gene seed was stored, because also the gene seed of the Salamander Warriors who had fallen during the battle had been stored. Hearing this, Mirsan, through this display of dishonor in the face of Thalsacane himself, saying, you offered, we accepted. Is this the type of commander you are, that you would, offer a hand of friendship and then in your other hand you have a dagger? Thalsacane went absolutely fucking apoplectic with rage, because he was nominally in command of the attack and ordered his executioners to turn on the Astral Claws, and they were killed. The Salamanders who had surrendered took up arms against the Astral Claws, but they were aghast at the violence that was inflicted upon the Astral Claws by the executioners, who not only killed every single Astral Claw on the Pyre of Glory, on the Salamander ship, but then went through onto the Hyrcania and slaughtered every living thing in there and took their heads.
Wow.
The Hyrcania ended up being effectively an abattoir, which only contained the dead of the chapter in terms of serfs and servitors, but also the headless bodies of over 200 Astral Claws. Thalsacane returned to Captain Mirsan and presented the head.
Here's a bunch of heads.
Yeah, here's Kamak.
Thanks.
Kamak Commodus's head.
What do I do with them?
As way of not only apology but recompense for this gross dishonor. This really was a turning point for the executioners, as they realized what they had actually allied with, what the Astral Claws had become. And en masse, the entire chapter severed ties with the Astral Claws, becoming a rogue kind of force within the Maelstrom Zone. This is not to say they became Loyalist. There were still battles between the executioners and Loyalists, but these would be largely instigated by Loyalist forces who were not aware of what was happening within the larger scope of the war.
So they were just defending themselves.
Yes-ish. But they would attack without question. It was like on site between the executioners and the Astral Claws, which led to numerous almost suicidal attacks against the Astral Claws, in which the Astral Claws won perhaps only a handful of those attacks. The real benefit of this to the Loyalists was that the executioners ceased attacking Imperial shipping. There were no more raids against Imperial convoys and smaller Imperial patrols. So the defection of the executioners dealt really a true hammer blow to Huron's forces. And so now we see that not only are the Lamenters, imprisoned, the Mantis Warriors are effectively destroyed as a fighting force. They're still out there, but they are a ragtag band. With the Endymion cluster largely lost to the Tyrant of Badab, and the Executioners' betrayal, as Huron saw it, left the Astral Claws now as the only Astartes fighting force on the secessionist side. And it is at this stage that Huron's kind of dreams of glory and dominion were completely shattered. And his forces now were left largely by themselves within the Badab sector in that central blue zone, facing the full wrath of the Imperium. It was now
from all sides.
It was now a completely contained rebellion that could not spread. There were no routes for it to spread outside of the Maelstrom Zone. And in our next episode, we will discuss how it all ends.
Jesus.
It was all a dream.
It's not looking good for old Huron.
Old Huron.
Lieutenant Lufgut.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I love the Executioners being like, yeah, no, this isn't working for us. We're gonna bounce. You guys are.
We're gonna defect. Yeah.
You guys are a bunch of dicks.
Yeah.
You gene stealing dicks.
Yeah. Give me your heads. I need them to prove I'm a good guy. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Oof. Mate, the walls are closing in. I wonder how defiant. Don't answer this, but I wonder how defiant Lufgut and his merry band are. Are they kind of like, oh shit, or are they still very?
God, I hope they're like, oh, we can win this, and then they just get wasted.
Yeah.
Like absolutely wiped out. Yeah, exactly. So the next episode map is essentially the purple and blue sections at the top of this existing map are now red. So it's all red.
Yeah, it's only the Badab sector in the kind of the lower right middle.
How many Astral Claws would be in that sector now of the kind of, what was it, 4,000 that they had?
Of 3,500, there'll probably be about 2,000-ish left.
Right, okay.
Perhaps more.
So not an insignificant amount.
I mean, by the end of this entire campaign, there was 10,600-ish Loyalist Space Marines fighting. Were deployed to that entire area.
Wow.
Across 13 chapters. So a lot of full chapters were deployed, and some sent various numbers of companies.
What was the civilian death toll? Is the question we're all asking ourselves.
It's ongoing. We are now easily within the low hundreds of millions.
Wow. Okay.
Sunday morning kind of vibes.
It's collateral, isn't it? It's war.
Yeah.
What is it good for?
Absolutely the Imperium.
Yeah.
Right, Ben, take us out.
Nice. All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules and merch. Again, if you are keen to support the show, just click on the Quartermaster link in the description and give us all your traitor bucks. We will be, secessionist bucks. We'll be back again soon, displaying just how little Kral and I know. And until then, a goodbye.
Ciao now, bye.
Toodaloo.